Hello, Algebra 1. Today we are talking about the slope formula and slope in context. So most of this is review from the past few lessons, but the big new thing we're going to learn today is something called the slope formula. Here are our learning targets for today, so you can go ahead and read those. And in our first situation, we have Manuel worked all summer at an amusement park and he saved $1,050. At the end of the summer, he stopped putting money into the account and instead started spending money. Manuel made the table below to show the activity in his account. All right, so we can definitely see that his money is decreasing, and what that should tell us is that we will have a negative rate or a negative slope. So let's go ahead and find his rate or slope. Again, those are the same thing. And what you should notice is that we are dropping by $50 minus 50 for each of these, while weeks are going up by 1. All right, we can see that is constant all the way through. We're doing that same thing. So again, we will do negative 50 over 1, which is just negative 50. And you do need to have units since they were provided here. So this will be amount in saving is dollars per, our time is weeks. Excuse me. So starting point or y-intercept, again, this is always a 0 comma. There is no other option. It is 0 comma. So you can just write that down right away and then find where your 0 comma is in your table. And this is 0 comma 1050. All right, so now let's go ahead and write our function rule. I'm just going to make this a y and an x comma y here for our points. And our function rule would be our money equals, so that's a y equals. And then just think about how much we started with. Well, Manuel started with $1,050, right? And what's happening to it? It is dropping, so minus $50 each week. And each week is x. So let's make sure we understand what these numbers mean in this situation. What does the rate of change or slope mean? And where do we see it in our function rule? Well, that negative $50 per week just means he's spending $50 every week. And where do we see it in our function rule? We see it right here. All right, it is multiplied to our independent variable, which in this case is x. And that will always happen. Our rate of change or slope is always multiplied to our independent variable. And then what does the y-intercept mean in this situation? Where do we see it in our function rule and your table? Well, our y-intercept was 0 comma 1050 or 1050, and we should know that is our starting amount of money, or starts with $1,050. And where do you see it in your function rule or in your table? Well, in the function rule, basically it's the number not with the independent variable. So I'm going to say it's not with x. And in our table, again, we always know this is a 0 comma. Right? So that's from our table, and that's from our function rule. And this is just an abbreviation for function. All right, so let's talk about our slope formula. Although we are now very good at finding slope from a graph and from a table by just doing our jumps, there is also a formula that will work every time, and this is called the slope formula. So this is what it looks like. It's M stands for slope. Don't ask me why. Y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, and here's how it works. 1 would be our first x, so we call that x1. 1,000 would be our first y, so that's y1. Remember, points are in the form x comma y. So this guy would be x2 and y2. And then you're just going to go ahead and follow this formula. So you're going to put m equals y2 minus y1. That will be 950 minus 1,000 over x2 minus x1, 2 minus 1. And then you'll just evaluate this. You can type it in your calculator if you want, but you're going to get a negative 50 over 1, which is negative 50. All right, and if you notice, these are actually points from your table, 1, 1,000, 2, 950, and you can see we got the exact same slope. All right, let's go ahead and try this one. Again, x1, y1, x2, y2. All right, m equals y2 minus y1, 750 minus 850, over x2 minus x1, 6 minus 4. And that's going to be a negative 100 divided by 2, which will simplify to negative 50. So there you go. That's your slope formula. All right, so let's try it again. This time we're going to put some negatives in here, which makes this a little bit trickier. We're going to use the slope formula. Now, if you prefer to just make a table and do your jumps, that is totally okay. I'm going to show how to do that as well. But a lot of people do prefer slope formula, and it is something you'll use next year in geometry as well. All right, so I'm just going to write my formula over here just so you remember it. And some people don't need to label their points, but I do recommend doing that as we start off here. So we have y2 minus y1, 3 minus 3, over x2 minus x1, negative 8 minus 2. All right, and 3 minus 3 is 0, and negative 8 minus 2 is negative 10. And what you should know is 0 divided by anything is 0. And so what this means is it says draw a line to match the slope. If your slope is 0, you should know you have a horizontal line. All right, now if you don't like the slope formula because it's something you have to remember, here's what you can do instead. Just stack your 2 points on top of each other and do your jumps instead. 3 to 3 is plus 0, 2 to negative 8, that's down 10. And what you're going to notice is that the numbers match exactly what we got with the slope formula. So then you would just do 0 over negative 10 and you'd also get a 0. All right, so it's up to you which method you prefer. Okay, I'm going to do the slope formula for these next two because that is what we are learning today. All right, so slope again, y2 minus y1. Be careful with this one. Y2 is negative 7. It's always a minus. And then y1 is negative 5. So there are 2 minuses there. Negative 3 is x2, always a minus. x1 is 8. So actually, this minus minus becomes a plus plus. Negative 7 plus 5 is negative 2 over, this is a negative 11. And a negative divided by a negative is always a positive. So you should have a positive 2 11s for your slope. And since it is a positive slope, our line will be going uphill. All right, and one more, x1, y1, x2, y2. And again, slope is y2 minus y1. And be careful because again, see how this y1 is a minus? You always have subtraction no matter what, and then if there happens to be another negative, you'll just change them both to pluses. And then x2 minus x1. So this becomes an 11 over 0. Now if you type this into your calculator, you're going to get an error. And that is because we cannot divide by 0, and what we call this is undefined. Okay, dividing by 0 is always undefined. So think about, we talked about this, what type of line has an undefined slope? And if you said vertical line, you are correct. Vertical line, undefined. Horizontal line has a slope of 0. Okay, so you'd give your final answer as undefined here, just like for 0, we gave our final answer as 0. All right, finally, we're just going to do a little review of some topics we've already discussed. 1 week into summer, Katie has $135. during week 11 of summer, Katie has $270. So we're going to write two ordered pairs, or if you prefer to make a table, we can do that. Just make sure that when you write your ordered pairs or make your table, dollars needs to be your dependent variable and time or weeks will come first. So that way you should have the point 1 comma 135 and 11 comma 270. Hey, and since I've already made a table here, I'm just going to use my jumps to find the rate, which is actually what's being asked next. It says find how much money Katie is making each week. This is really asking for your rate. Okay, the rate tells us how much money she's making each week. So I'm going to go ahead and do my jumps. 135 to 270. Whoops. That would be, should be 135, but we'll subtract and just find out. Yep. 1 to 11, that's going up 10, and then you will have to divide it. All right, and that gives us 13.5, but remember this is money, so I do want to write it as $13.50 each or per, whichever you prefer, week. Now, if you want, you can do your slope formula. We could say 270 minus 135 over 11 minus 1, and that will give you the exact same thing. Okay, so I usually kind of switch back and forth between them. All right, next, identify the slope and y-intercept. So again, slope and rate are the same. I'm just going to go down and over, and I went down 1 over 2, and so that's my slope, -1/2. Make sure you have that negative. Your y-intercept, again, is on the y-axis. It's where we hit, and that looks like it's at a -3. Make sure you have your 0, comma. Okay, and we'll do this one more time with this one. Slope, this line's going uphill, so I'm going to go up, and that's up 4, and that's over 2. Make sure you divide them. 4 over 2 is 2. And my y-intercept is right here on the origin, and so that's a 0, 0. And our last problem, this is a little review from our from Unit 1, I should say. Put the equation into function form and then identify the slope and y-intercept. This means to solve for y. So as a reminder, if we have multiple variables and we're solving for y, we're going to move our 4x over first by subtracting it. And we're subtracting because it's a positive right now. Bring down your -8y. These two guys cannot combine, remember? One has an x, one doesn't, so we're just going to rewrite it. Okay, hopefully this looks familiar. And then finally, we're dividing by -8, and that will get our y by itself. Okay, so I have a y equals -16 divided by -8 is a 2, and oops, I forgot my negative, -4 divided by -8. We can go ahead and math frac, and I want you to notice it becomes a positive, and it is a +1/2. Don't lose your x. All right, so there's your function form. And now, since we have solved for y, we should be able to identify your slope and your y-intercept. So a reminder, your slope is always with your independent variable or your x, and that's going to be a +1/2. And a reminder, your y-intercept is always a 0, comma, and that's going to be that other number that's added on that is not with the x. So our y-intercept is a 0, 2. Okay, and we'll be reviewing this some more tomorrow. So I hope you have a great day. Bye.